Welcome to the Dean Obeidallah show. Joining me now is our friend Nayyera Haq. She worked in the US State Department. She writes for MSNBC.com, appears in numerous media outlets, and has her own online show everyone should check out called State of Our Nation. Nayyera, thanks so much for joining with all the breaking news about the Middle East. It's good to chat with you.
It is. And I always know that I'm going to have a good conversation. And even when it looks like the world's on fire, Dean, you make me laugh. And right now, that's kind of what I'm hanging my hat on. So come on, make me laugh right now.
Am I a clown? I'm here to amuse you? Come on, I get to quote from Goodfellas from my childhood. Like, am I a clown? I make you laugh? All right, let's get to the real reality. It's funny to open with a joke in the darkest of days, but you need that, folks. A sense of humor is in power. I'm not even kidding. It's therapeutic and empowering. There's been studies that
Oh, Peter just talked about that you have to have the ability to laugh and continue because that's part of resilience. You can't be resilient and feel like you're dying all the time.
I agree. So let me get you first and top. What is your reaction to the surprise, unprovoked attack by the United States and Israel on Iran?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are struggling with that idea of unprovoked right now, right? There's the Trump administration narrative has been they're about to get a nuclear bomb, but I thought this past summer we already stopped their nuclear campaign, right? That was the first statement. Okay, good. So there's some provocation with how dare they try to get a nuclear bomb? All right. Well, and then there's the argument the people of Iran need our help. They've been desperate. They've been oppressed. Okay, but also that's not new. There have been massive protests, and this latest round have been brutal in how they've been stifled. But the Masa Amiri protests also happened, and that was about women and grandmothers and multi-generation women fighting for their rights. There are many, many places in the world where people would love U.S. intervention. Majority of them would prefer U.S. humanitarian intervention. So we've cut all of that, right? Cut out billions of dollars of support that would actually keep people in their homes, sustainable, feeling good towards the United States because of the type of intervention. So we cut all of that goodwill. And now it's while negotiations were happening to get to the deal that already existed in the Obama administration, right? Trying to do the same thing to come back. Trump just decides to launch a massive assault. And it's an assault, right? This is not just a strike. At least 8 cities hit overnight by 2 countries. People are fleeing their homes. Reports about a girls' school with now it's about more than 120 reported dead from that incident. And everybody's looking around thinking, why? Like, why now? What is the rationale? Where does this go next? And it strikes me that this has been, while very well coordinated and executed on the military side, the layer that is supposed to be the president, the commander-in-chief, the strategist, very poorly thought out on the long-term side.
You're saying Donald Trump didn't have a strategic vision beyond just stealing the news media for a day because the Epstein files were dangerously getting close to implicating him directly? I mean, I just want to say, you worked in the US State Department, and I know you're not a lawyer, but you're familiar with international law. Is there any justification under international law for what the United States and Israel just did to Iran?
Yeah, no. And that's part of where the United States is vulnerable, I would say, right? Because there's been no case made to the United Nations, which can be manipulated and has been in the past by Russia and the United States. But the run up to the Iraq War, yes, it was a lie, but there was at least that token effort to create some kind of coalition of the willing. The run up to Afghanistan was the United States got attacked with intelligence, figured out where the attackers were based out of. It did not need to lead to a ground war, but at least everybody understood that idea of retaliation. And that was the only time Article 5 of NATO has been activated. So NATO was in on that campaign. This is just the United States and Israel. And so much of this has been based on Trump's own sense of timing and his own ideas about what he feels like he should be able to do as commander-in-chief. So nothing about this is legal. There's a lot about Trump's actions and policies that are not legal, but our world is not structured to stop people before they commit the crime, right? So the damage is already done. Netanyahu's damage in Gaza is already done. And our systems, our accountability systems aren't designed to turn that quickly and make things better. And that's what's so scary and horrifying about power dynamics in the world right now is that someone like Trump, someone like Netanyahu can just decide that they want to use all these resources to bomb other countries.
And, I just want to add on a human level, I have numerous Iranian American friends who are so happy that the leader of Iran was killed. And they're hoping that their family members, or even they can go back and visit, will have freedom. But the problem is, and I don't want to damper their enthusiasm because I hope they're going to be right. But two things. One is, and I talked to Joe Cicerone on Saturday, who made it very clear, and I backed up in research afterwards. Since World War II, there's not been regime change without boots on the ground.
Yes.
Air war does not lead to regime
Nope.
change, right? And then that was backed up yesterday by Lindsey Graham. They don't want regime change. And then today, Pete Hegseth made it very clear. There's no desire for regime change. It's just sort of the idea of lessening the threat posed by Iran. So they're not going to help the people. Secondly, in Venezuela, they did nothing. Marco Rubio just testified in January before the Senate. It was asked by Democratic senators. It appears like you replace one dictator with another, but the one that you replaced the old one with is pro-Trump and gave you oil.
Yep.
What are you doing about democracy? And he literally used an analogy about like microwave ovens and frozen dinners, and you can't do this right away. And maybe in 3 to 6 months, we'll start talking about democracy and reforms in Venezuela. They don't care about human rights.
That's
And
not what
so
it's about.
that's what concerns me. So I want my Iranian friends for their families to have freedom, just like I want my Palestinian family in the West Bank and the ones in Gaza to have freedom as well. But this is not the regime. The Trump regime is not the one, nor is Netanyahu. I'm concerned with the people of Iran.
Mhm. Then that's where, and Stewart's asking this question and made a statement that I want to also respond to in this, which is about the idea of continued bombing allows citizens to storm these empty or unarmed government buildings and toss them out. That's a great idea, right? And that looks good for a day. The challenge is there's nothing sustainable behind it. What
Right.
we have right now is an Iranian diaspora that has been talking about Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son. The Shah's son, very popular in the diaspora, has never actually lived in Iran. So the people of Iran have no connection to him. At best, he could be somebody who would come in and maybe bring different factions together. But here's where this gets very diabolical. When the idea is not regime change and you're not going to commit boots on the ground to fix it, to give people support, like you said, the couple of months they would need to actually organize and create a democracy, then it's regime change for what? Okay, so you kill Khomeini, one or two other deputy leaders, somebody else will come forward, right?
Mhm.
There's chain of command, continuity. Trust me, they have that in play as they clearly had their targets of who they're going to hit back because they know at some point that it was a possibility that the United States or Israel would attack. So they have all these plans that they are executing. But what it really is starting to look like that the United States wants, or under the Trump administration, and hearing Hegseth's point, is that the United States wants Iran to fall apart into
Right.
these different ethnic groups, right? So the idea that there's Kurds and there's Baloch people. The Kurds, let Turkey deal with them. Let the Baloch people who are already trying to separate from Pakistan, let Pakistan deal with them. And this idea that there might not be any other chaos, but that keeps now Iran no longer has power. The regime, the Iranian people don't have the power, even as they did as a bad guy. They don't have that power on the world stage. What's dumb, truly dumb about that argument, that carving up these ethnic territories in Iran would be helpful to anybody, is Turkey does not want Kurdish separate. They did not want them from Iraq or Syria as well. So no, they're not going to help there. The last thing Pakistan wants is more Baloch people, when that's what they're targeting in their own country. And they're fighting a war with the Taliban right now in Afghanistan. So what happens in all of this? Well, what happens is what you kind of got out of Iraq,
Mhm.
which is extremist groups came up. ISIS came out of Iraq, right? And that was even with boots on the ground, even with a transitional government, all of the resources we spent in Iraq still got a new terrorist group out of there.
Right.
Not even promising to put boots, like to do any of those things this time around. So yes, it's bad, guys. This is very, very bad. Killing Khomeini, awesome. Be excited about that for a day, right? Like all of that. There's no long game here. The long game
No,
is no bueno. No
Do you want
bueno.
me to do you want me to propose what I think the long game would be? Because, I've heard from people in the past who studied it, and so I'm not coming up with this theory, but it makes sense to me now. Netanyahu will arm the different factions, and the US will be involved in arming the factions, so there's essentially a civil war, because Iranians slaughter each other is something Netanyahu would love to see. It destabilizes the nation, it reduces the number of Iranians. The idea that Netanyahu cares about the Iranian people, or Trump is oblivious, he has dementia, like, what he did in the White House today was beyond anything. But to me, I've long heard that Netanyahu wants to destabilize Iran. So I would think arming the factions, you say it like you're doing it in good faith, but it looks like Syria, where you had different factions and different warlords running it, or Iraq, where it's, the Kurds in the north.
You know what came out of Syria that we didn't have coming out of Iraq? So when you have a foreign military force, boots, quote unquote, boots on the ground, a coalition, you don't have refugees, right? You have systems in place to help people at least stay, shelter in place or do something sustainable while you figure out the new government. This refugee crisis coming out of Iran will double, if not triple, what we saw coming out of Syria.
Mhm.
So armed factions, and then what? Where do you think people who are caught in the middle of the civil war are going to go? They're not going to Israel. They're not going to the United States. Israel's not going to be mattered by that. Turkey's going to have a fit,
Wow.
right? Iraq,
Right.
all of these other countries are like, absolutely not. We cannot deal with this. We're not going to sustain this. And so when those countries don't sustain it, right? You start seeing European migration. All of that we saw with Syria, like 10x.
And to make it even more clear that I'm not speculating that the Trump administration is not going to do what it takes to build a democracy. Pete Hegseth said today, point blank, about the war, quote, "It's no democracy building exercise." So that's the Secretary of Defense saying today, this is not a democracy. They have no intention. This is not for the Iranian people. At the end of the day, maybe somewhere down the road, the Iranian people rise up. But if you put the Shah's son to remind people, the Shah was horrible. He was brutally repressive.
He was not a popular guy.
Right, he was the flip side of the Iranian clerics, that he was secular. He had his, I think it was SAVAK, SAVAK, the secret police, which was like the KGB, but worse, doing horrible crimes against
I
people.
mean, okay, women were allowed to not walk around with
Right, it's all a trade-off. Like, there's different, it's still a
within
repressive regime.
degrees. He was
Right.
slightly better in degrees, but the idea, again, they're very clear this is not a democracy building exercise because Shah is a fancy word for king, right? The idea of reinstalling a king that then would be beholden to you is literally what the policy was in the 70s that led to the Islamic Revolution. People forget that before the Shah, there actually was a democratic state in Iran. They're not talking about returning to that, they being the current Trump administration, right? It's this idea of what can we best control and keep this country weak and disaggregated. And what I'm saying is that you can't, because those snakes, what you're letting fester, they're going to come back. They're going to spread out. They're going to bite other people. It does not stay contained. John Bolton, Mr. Regime Change in Iraq, Trump's first national security advisor, who has actually argued for strikes on Iran, has come out against this entire operation. Like, when you've lost John Bolton, you really have gone.
He's
like,
also under indictment, don't forget.
chaos is going to lead to create a power vacuum. I mean, right, John Bolton still believes you can put democracy in a box and deliver it with a military. But like, they're not saying that. They're not even pretending to say that.
Right. And the history that Nayyera is laying out, we all know it. Trump knows it. He might be oblivious. The people around him know it. Netanyahu knows it. That's their end game. Their end game is a destabilized country that breaks into different parts, so it's no longer a threat to Israel. Daily Show did a great montage of Netanyahu lying about the Iran being on the verge of a nuclear weapon since the 1990s. It was a great montage they put together. Really, it's kind of remarkable. In Donald Trump, Netanyahu finally found someone who would believe his lies and go to war in the service of his own nation's security. In a way, when I say that, though, I don't believe he bullied Trump. I don't believe he made Trump do anything he doesn't want.
No.
Trump is motivated by personal benefit, either financial or political. So in Trump's own mind, this helps him somehow. So again, Netanyahu could say all day, do this. He doesn't control Trump. He doesn't control our country. Trump made a decision to do this because somehow it benefits Trump. And I'm not sure what, besides the short-term control of the media narrative, don't talk Epstein, makes him look like a tough guy.
It's the tough guy. It's the immediate psychological relief, the dopamine hit, except, he gets to use aircraft carriers to get his dopamine. The rest of us just doom scroll online. To Polly's point, she says they can't hold our own democracy intact. Of course, they're going to do it overseas. And that is actually, unfortunately, when we look at the academic study of empire, when empires start to conduct war while their domestic economies are crashing, that is a sign of a declining empire.
Interesting.
This is like basic empire academic studies. Yep. And you can track that with the Roman Empire, track with the Greek Empire. Oh, I love this, by the way. We hear so much about how the Trump administration and the nationalists and MAGA folks really love Roman and Greek architecture, right? The idea of
they do,
like what they back in the day, and they'd like to take some of that iconography of the Roman Empire. I'm like, just guys, you do remember, don't forget, Persia was an empire 3,000 years, and
Yep.
they won against most of these people, right? Like that is also part of the back in the lizard brain narrative here that yes, there are many happy people that the Ayatollah is dead. That yes, many happy people in Iran, but don't for 1 second think that they're going to like the United States because of it.
Yeah, and within the Iranian society, and I've talked to different experts like Trita Parsi and others in the past, where talk about it, it's really divided. He estimated, and there's no polling, maybe 25% of the people in Iran supported the Ayatollahs, wanted the cleric. Then from there, you had a subset that wanted the Shah back. Then another subset wanted a true, maybe like a democratic republic, like the United States or something they see in Europe. So there's not a unanimity, but there were probably 75% of the population opposed the current cleric regime there. And we'll see what happens. This idea that the people, though, Donald Trump on Saturday, he's shifting story. He said, this is your time, rise up, your only chance of a generation. Apparently, that was a 24-hour window because we're no longer about democratic institution building. But to tell people to rise up, how are you supposed to rise up with no arms against a heavily armed regime that has all the weaponry and a brutal repressive apparatus in place for decades? How are you supposed to rise up against that?
Yep. Yeah, that's right, because that's literally what they were actually trying to do with the protests.
Right, and they were slaughtered for doing that.
Bingo. Right, like that's been done. So what material support would you be providing this time to make it happen?
It's and I wanna read something else that
Like
people
the IRGC is still there.
I know.
All their weapons are still there. The secret police, they're all now they're actually a couple of folks have been speaking out, those who were tortured in Iranian prisons, and said, guys, what you don't realize is the power vacuum, what it'll do is at the local level, um, they're going to get more brutal. So because they have no strategic or connection now to a national network, or like why there's instability for Khamenei and for what's going on with this, the Supreme Council, the police, they're going to be even more brutal because they're going to get away with it. Right. And that the political prisoners who are there are going to bear the brunt of them feeling insecure and angry. So the near term, it's not like they opened the jails like they did in Syria, right? There's no victorious army that's coming in here. There was a massive bombing campaign and killing of several leaders. People, regular people, still in jail, still in their neighborhoods. Yes, there's a lot to be scared of for them right now.
It's interesting also, it tends to be the right-wing actors that end up engaging in violence and cruelty. It's not like the liberals rise up and then use violence. They tend now people can find some exceptions, so leftist guerrillas. I'm talking about in general. So you've got that. I think, look, Donald Trump
Well,
said
yeah,
today.
intellectual and academic elites tend to not walk around with guns.
Right, they try to outthink everyone and make a good
Which
argument with a
doesn't
lot
work,
of
right? Like that
nuance,
also doesn't work.
and that
I
doesn't
was
work.
logically, rhetorically correct.
I will
Right.
debate you in the well of the academic, headquarters or something. But Donald Trump said today, a short time ago, uh, and it's just unbelievable, folks. If you haven't seen, and I shared the clip online, but
Mhm.
if you haven't seen it, Donald Trump talks about the men who died in combat in Iran, give him a round of applause. And then he talked for a minute and a half about the ballroom he's going to build and the gold drapes. And this happened in front of a live audience. This was beyond anything I've ever seen. It's embarrassing, but it's a sociopathic person with dementia. But he did say, I'm not going to limit. He was telling the media that it could take 4 weeks, take 6 weeks. I'm not going to say no boots on the ground. When you hear that, it sounds like he's preparing for a much longer engagement. To remind people, Saddam Hussein was killed in 2005. That war went on for 6 more years.
Mhm.
It's not like you kill a leader in
Mission
a country.
accomplished banner?
Right, right. This
Ooh.
went on for 6 more years, the war, and people have to keep that in mind. You could kill the leader, and if you wanna do nation building and actually do something for the people and it ends up not working. So, the idea of the killing this leader, it's not the end of the regime, but they've backed off the end of the regime. That's what's kind of so upsetting to me because they gave people the hope.
4 hours of hope.
Yep, that was the winner.
4 hours of hope. That
And
was
remember, George Bush the father told the Iraqi people, rise up and we'll help you. And they didn't go to bat for them. And Saddam Hussein came in and cruelly killed, I think, 50,000 people, the estimate is. And that was after the first Iraq war. So that happens there. I want to read something Pete Hegseth said today, and someone who worked in the State Department. He said, America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air war power ever. And he said this, no stupid rules of engagement, no nation building quagmire, no democracy building exercise, no politically correct wars. This sounds like something they would play at his Nuremberg trial. The idea of saying no stupid rules of engagement. Rules of engagement, my understanding, are Those are rules so you don't kill civilians
Yep.
without any rule. You don't. That's between us and barbarians. ISIS, Al
Yes.
Qaeda don't use rules of engagement. Now the United States is saying on record, we will not have rules of engagement. We will copy the ISIS or Netanyahu playbook, which he did in Gaza.
Well, that's
And there was
the
no rules of engagement there.
well, this is what happens when you don't have accountability.
Right.
Right? You don't have domestic or global accountability, and then any rule of law starts to fall apart because there are a significant number of people. There's some who, like I thought, say it's like 20% of people who acknowledge the rules and believe in them and follow them for that reason. Then there's like the 20% of people who are just they're gonna reject it and do their own thing. And yes, that's when policing and all of that stuff comes in. So that's 40% of 60% of the population psychologically will often follow the rules because they fear the accountability that they see on the other end.
Uh-huh.
So when you have a president who's been impeached twice, who has been convicted of sexual crimes, has been convicted of white collar crimes and money, doing things with money you're not supposed to, corruption, straight up
Mhm.
corruption, and he gets reelected, the message that he is given and others are given, he can get away with this.
Sure.
And he is now partnered with somebody in Netanyahu who has the same approach. Now, I think Netanyahu has a much bigger agenda. Trump's agenda is trying to get past the midterm elections.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Netanyahu's agenda has been the more he can sustain a war front, whether it's in Gaza or somewhere else, and he can maintain being a national security president, he can stay in power, and he can meet the objective of obliterating any chance of a Palestinian state. It is not an accident that settler activity in the West Bank has increased.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where the eyes of the world are right now.
Yep.
That even in the air raid sirens and shelter in place that you hear in Israel, that is not something that exists for people in East Jerusalem. That's the Palestinian folks. Like you can see this disparity play out in real time. So that's what we're going to also see as part of Netanyahu's agenda. Trump does not have longer term agendas like that. That's just not.
No, he's a goldfish. It's day by day. And to remind people, when we're saying Netanyahu's committed war crimes, he's been charged by the International Criminal Court. I'm looking at his indictment right here, and they charge him responsibly for war crimes of starvation as a method of warfare, of intentionally directing an attack against civilian population, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. That's literally the indictment against Netanyahu. He should have been arrested even though we're not a signatory. They should allow him to be arrested here in the U.S. or other countries. I hope they will at some point. The man is a war criminal, and Donald Trump's engaging in illegal war. It's not authorized by Congress nor by the UN. And there should be, I mean, we're not a signatory to the ICC.
And even if we didn't, right, like, doesn't even have the support of the American public, right? Like there's a certain amount of symbolism that you can say, well, my people want me to do this, and this is legitimate because that's what I was elected to do. You were explicitly elected as the peace president, the guy who was not going to do any more foreign wars. Like you were not elected to do this. There's the popularity at the time of intervening in Iraq or Afghanistan. This is why, because there was this big public narrative push that was made. We're all sitting here like, what? Okay, when is this happening? Why is this happening? What's going on? This is not a popular intervention. 29% of Americans approve of this. So I still, I'm like, okay, even if you wanted this to get you past the midterms, you didn't do it well.
It's the reason Donald Trump did not make the case to the American people is that he doesn't feel he has to.
Yes.
Our relationship with Donald Trump is not a president with constituents. It is a king to his subjects. That's how Trump views us. He doesn't need our approval. He doesn't need the approval of the people. He's got his people around him, and he looks at how Republicans feel on an issue. And as long as they're happy, generally happy, they're fine with it. I mean, all day we're seeing clips of Trump in the 2024 campaign saying, if you elect Kamala Harris, there'll be a war in Iran, all that kind of stuff. No one forgets it. It's just
projection. Projection.
Right. So, and here's where we are right now. So Nayyera, I don't know how long this is going to go. I mean, to remind people, when Putin started his war in Ukraine, the estimates were he thought it was going to end in a month. We are now in year 5. We just entered year 5 of that war. What would you think? I mean, I don't know when this will end. None of us know, but what's your sense?
Well, here's what Ukraine learned in that war, that Iranian drones were being given to Russia, and Russia's been using them against the people of Ukraine. So what you're hearing right now is not even that the Iranian Air Force is taking casualties or taking risks. It's drones. Everything that they've used to attack U.S. military bases that surround them and the cities that surround them, they can do without the type of expensive manpower and equipment that we're using. So the United States just lost 3 F-15 fighter jets in Kuwait because they probably didn't do any exercises to deconflict or didn't give the Kuwaitis the information like, hey, you're our allies. I mean, this is used to happen between Afghanistan and Pakistan all the time. They'd be deconflicting operations and making sure that, the people, the leadership all knew when different military assets were being activated and where. Very basic in ally coordination. And this is why you'll see military exercises in the South China Sea, is just to make sure all the signals are correct. So much of this was a surprise and not organized that, yes, the Kuwaitis are like, okay, we see some F-15 fighter jets coming. That's something like $45 million that just, I'm glad that the pilots and the folks in the plane are okay.
Yep.
The Americans were reported safe and sound, but that's $45 million, and Iran's using drones, right? So we're already there. We're seeing the imbalance of what it costs the United States to try to make this happen. And Iran, again, same thing that Ukraine has. Iran has the mindset now, we're protecting our territory.
And this is, every instinct I have tells me this is going to play out so badly for us that it's not going to end in a month. It will only end after the midterm if Republicans take a crushing defeat, and then that will be the referendum they need. And that Donald Trump will say he's a wartime president and we can't have elections. Expect that, folks. And my view is, I see a poll that just came out: 80% of MAGA supports the bombing. Okay, then let's draft MAGA to fight this war.
Sure.
That's my proposal. If you love Trump, go do the right thing and volunteer. And if you won't, we should start a draft, and everybody in MAGA and everyone who's in MAGA should be taxed for this war, because I don't want to pay for Trump's war. None of us want to pay for Trump's war or risk our children or grandchildren to fight Trump's battle. MAGA, be tough, go volunteer, put your grandchildren or children on the front lines right now. Do it. And they won't, because they're cowards and they're pathetic, and they won't pay for it either.
Well, it is very difficult to fight a war from your basement and using a video game controller. Right? You'd actually have to show up and have a basic standard of training and have some experience and do that. And God bless, God bless the folks who do it. So many folks who have signed up. I mean, I have military members in the listed side of my family, where for some of them it was very much like, well, this is how I'm going to go to college. This is how I'm going to establish a career. And it is like, who actually who makes the decisions versus who serves are two very different economic classes in America. And it's not fair. And this is the challenge that we have with this all volunteer army, where it seems like, okay, well, they're all volunteers. No, they're volunteering to be in the military. They didn't volunteer for a specific mission, right? So the idea, right, like Vietnam, why did it become so unpopular? Because people were drafted. Families had skin in the game of like, what are we doing this for?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I hope that conversation comes back up now, because it's an important one. And I think that is a very important check on how a government makes decisions about going to war.
And final thing, this is clearly a violation of international law. The UN had a heated discussion about it the other day, the UN Security Council. Should we expect anything from the UN? And do they have any power, given that the US gets a veto on the Security Council?
Yeah, well, the Russia and China, we have to wait to see how they're going to play out here, because Russia has been supportive and allied with Iran. And Russia and China also are both very active on the Security Council. And so they will use this opportunity to poke it at the United States in some way. But again, the Security Council is designed, the entire UN system is designed more for humanitarian relief than it is for stopping any military activity.
Unbelievable. My friend Nayyera, it's great to chat with you. Where can people, you're doing your online show, State of Our Nation, where can people check that out?
Yeah, check it out on Instagram and YouTube Shorts. It's called State of Our Nation, and I do a 3 things to know about the news of the day. It's a quick recap every morning. I'm obviously doing a lot on Iran these days, so please do check it out, sign up. And of course, Dean, always great to be with you here on the show.
Great to be with you. And thanks everyone who tuned in, who listened, a lot of great chats. I wish when I do You Are My Guest when I'm alone, I would read the chats. I can't do it today, but maybe I'll do one tomorrow.
I did see a couple of folks, right? But you can't volunteer if you don't have viable choices. Yep.
Very good. All right, Nayyera. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day.